You see, when you don't understand the metrics of the current political setup in the world, you will not understand the Bible. Should I say, I am not here to talk about the Bible per se, but what we are talking about is related to the Bible 100%. Now, when you look at a man called Assad falling, is something which is in scripture where the Bible says Damascus shall fall. Before it falls, it shall be turned into ruins. So now that's another topic on its own. But we just want to talk about the relationship between Putin and Assad and Israel and ZANU-PF in essence. I don't know if you are still there.
Yes, I am here, sir. But where does ZANU-PF come in here? These are things that are happening in a country that's like 10,000 miles away from Harare. Aren't you trying to add apples to lemons here? Makutraya kusona mabhodoro panyaya dzedu.
Okay, you see, the relationship with the ZANU-PF and Putin is a very normal relationship which people were unaware of. Let me just tell you of a country called Uganda, a country called Venezuela, a country called Libya, a country called Syria. What is the common denominator between these countries? They were backed by Vladimir Putin, meaning their standing was a direct result of relying on Russia. Now, I said when I call you, you put me off when I tell you of the issue of Putin and Mnangagwa. Mnangagwa right now is standing because 90% of Putin and 10% of China. That's why he is standing. This is where we put Zimbabwe in the bracket. In which way? Look at the way elections are held in Russia. Look at the way elections are held in Uganda. Look at the way elections are held in Venezuela, in Libya when there was Gaddafi. I can't even say there were elections when there was Gaddafi. But what am I trying to show you? I'm just trying to show you the relationship with Russia and these dictators, how they come to power, how they maintain their power. So I can talk about where Assad and Putin started. They started the same year, 2000, and they have been together because of dictatorship and because of what? Arms deal. The same thing Russia is doing to Zimbabwe and the opposition.
Right. But I still struggle here because you see, there are countries in Africa that are very near to Zimbabwe that have very little or any relations with Russia. We're talking direct relations here. You would, I mean, I don't. It is still unfathomable to try and link the relationship between Russia and Belarus, Russia and Lithuania, Russia and Finland to a country like Zimbabwe. Yeah, Mr.
Okay,
Yoni, there you seem to be stretching your wishes and your
okay,
emotions.
okay. I think you are going to help me on this one. I will ask you a question because the dates I'm forgetting. When was the last time we were talking about the highlights of the news between Mnangagwa, Zambia, and Putin, where when Mnangagwa was reporting Zambia to Putin? When was it? Do you remember? I'm
I
failing
know
to
it's a
read.
few months ago, but that was just Mnangagwa trying to
Okay,
stretch his
so
wishes, right? With
yeah,
Putin, correct?
okay,
Mm,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Let me put it this way, Simba.
Yes,
Why
yes, yes.
do
Go
you
ahead.
think? Why do you think Mnangagwa wanted HH to fall? Why do you think Mnangagwa wants Frelimo to stand, SWAPO to stand, ANC to stand? And why do you think his goal in reporting Zambia to Mnangagwa, or what was his intentions in reporting Zambia that Zambia has got an American base? What do you think was the purpose? Mnangagwa wanted to establish a situation where he is the principal of SADC, and he has head boys in Zambia, in Mozambique, in Namibia, in Botswana, and in South Africa. His intentions were that after Frelimo, after ANC, after ZANU-PF, after SWAPO, after Edgar Lungu maintain power, then Russia would act as the big boy. And then by so doing, he was going to consolidate his power. Now, let's go back to Assad's fall. You see, I remember I was talking to you, Simba, some 3, 4, 5 years ago, when I was telling you that the reason why Mnangagwa is standing today solemnly is because of Russia. If Putin has problems, Mnangagwa is going to have problems. You know who is going to be the first problem in Zimbabwe for Mnangagwa? The army generals. Not even the opposition. Why? Because the army generals are afraid of Russia. In a scenario where Mnangagwa would get support from the KGB in Russia, and then he sends soldiers to protect him, then you know that all the army commanders would be wiped out. So now, this is the exact scenario where Assad was facing. Assad was getting arms from Russia. There was a 15 billion deal, arms deal between Russia and Assad. Why? All the weapons we saw in Iran, which were being used by Hezbollah, Hamas, Yemen, the rebels in Yemen, where were they getting them? From Russia. And what was the plan? Putin wanted to have a section of the world supporting him. This is where Mnangagwa comes in. This is where Venezuela comes in. This is where Uganda comes in. This is where all these rogue regimes come in. Now, the falling of Assad today in Syria. Many people say, Putin has turned his back on Assad. He has not done it. Putin is now at his weakest. Do you think he can sustain a war in Ukraine and win? Sustain a war in Zimbabwe and win? Sustain a war in Mozambique and win? Today, if Putin was strong, all the demonstrations, the riots you are seeing in Mozambique, you wouldn't be seeing them. Why? Putin would quash them. But today, Putin is at his weakest. That is the reason why you see that Assad is gone. And who is going to be the next? People like Mnangagwa. If today, Simba, the army generals could have this revelation, Putin is at his weakest. We can do anything to Mnangagwa, and Mnangagwa is not going to respond. That country called Zimbabwe will be free in days. That's where I come in.
Right. I'm going to be frank. Still sounds like a merry-go-round.
Yes.
Why? Because all these are interrelatives or interrelations that you seem to be putting together so that you
Mm-hmm.
can come up with a hypothesis that puts
Mm-hmm.
Putin and Mnangagwa and Assad in one box. Now, as
Uh-huh.
if one is gone, the other is following. It's sort of maybe the same similar scenario, don't you think? That
Mm.
a lot of Zimbabweans had when Saddam Hussein was toppled. Some people even composed the song Saddam Waenda Kazara Idi. You remember that song,
Okay.
right? And then also when Gaddafi fell, right? Sounded like, oh,
Mm.
Gaddafi Waenda Kazara Idi, right? And then what
Okay.
else?
Let
What
me.
else?
I
Hold
hear
on.
where you
Yeah.
are going.
Yeah. So yes, while the interrelations may be there, how do you actually make an actual cause and effect um, uh, 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 picture similar to what's happening in Syria to Zimbabwe?
Okay, Simba. Do you ever read of anywhere in the history of ZANU PF where they had a relationship with Saddam, the former, the late Saddam of Iraq? Do you have any where you can say ZANU PF and Saddam Hussein had links, like we are seeing the links between uh, Mnangagwa and Putin? If you
Or
can answer this.
are you forgetting, remember Nelson Mandela phoning Tony Blair and screaming at him and saying, look, what have you done? What have you done? Remember, that is when South Africa started severing ties with the United States. I mean, like literally distancing itself, pushing it away itself from South Africa. It was all because there was a direct relationship between Saddam and the liberation movements, both ZANU-PF and the ANC, between Arafat, right, in the Middle East, and many, and including the Hamas, and the liberation. What I'm saying is, there was a direct relationship, wasn't there?
Okay, can I put it
But
this way? You
but
remember?
that relationship did not necessarily translate to a removal of Mugabe.
Okay, can I take you to
And
the
the
2000?
model, the model that the West eventually pursued was not a removal of Mugabe. It was just a side swiping of Mugabe and putting the worst dictator ever in history, in human thinkable history, called Mnangagwa.
Okay, can I ask you a question, Simba? If your memory serves you
Go
well,
ahead, sir.
do you remember in the 2008 elections in Zimbabwe?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you remember there was a ship which was detained in Durban? Is it Durban or yeah? I think it's Durban. Where was it coming from?
There was something like that. I can't remember, but it was still, it's now a very long way,
Okay,
long
let me
time
tell
ago,
you.
16 or
Okay,
so,
let me
17
tell.
years
Yeah,
ago.
let me tell you. I remember even COSATU, the South African body in South Africa, saying those weapons from Russia to Zimbabwe must not reach ZANU-PF because they are going to be used to kill innocent Zimbabweans. Those weapons were coming from Putin. So directly speaking, Putin has been aiding Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF and Robert Mugabe the same way he was doing to Assad. Okay, do you know that in Venezuela, the opposition mounted elections in such a way that they won, but the ruling party under is it Maduro, they refused to hand over power exactly the same way ZANU-PF does it. And how did they refuse? They just called the Russian soldiers and they protected them. And Biden had no appetite to resist Russia in Venezuela. Venezuela, by the way, which is near in America, could not have free and fair elections because of Putin. So, my point being, wherever Russia puts its hand on, there is dictatorship and chaos. Now, the fact that we are saying Assad has been deserted by Putin is not a fact. Putin has been defeated in Syria. Putin is being defeated in Ukraine by the West, not by Ukraine. This is the reason why you look at Mnangagwa these days. He is changing his tune of pretending to be supporting this guy who won the elections in America. What is his name? Donald Trump. What is Mnangagwa saying? He says, I helped Donald Trump to win election. Do you believe that nonsense? Why Mnangagwa now is seeing that Russia is game over. Russia doesn't have the capacity anymore to sustain Africa, to sustain its allies. Venezuela, Yemen, Uganda, all the states which have been given arms by Putin can no longer find aid from Russia because of the Ukraine situation. Now, this is why people think that Putin has deserted or he has turned his back on Assad, whereas it's not that easy. It is because Putin is seeing that he cannot maintain a war in Ukraine and maintain a war in Syria and maintain a war in Israel. Do you know that what is happening in Israel between Iran and Israel, between Hezbollah and Israel, between Yemen and Israel, between Hamas and Israel, is a direct result of Russia. And honestly speaking, how can Putin sustain that and have time to entertain people like Mnangagwa. This goes back to our situation in Zimbabwe, that if today, have you ever asked yourself the question, why do you think army generals seem to be afraid of Mnangagwa? Why do you think is the case? It is because they think and they know that in case Mnangagwa just orders Russian troops to come into Zimbabwe and their game is over. But now Putin is at his weakest. This is the reason why in Syria, in Ukraine, in Poland, in Sweden, in countries even in the states like Denmark, which want to go into this organization of the West. What is it called? The NATO.
NATO, yeah.
They can't join. If it is going to be easy for them now to join NATO, because how can Putin threaten America and UK when he cannot deal with Ukraine? Do you think there is any wisdom in threatening America when Ukraine is saying you can't do me anything? So what am I trying to show you, Simba? I'm just trying to show you that Putin is no longer as strong as people think he is. Where is Mnangagwa taking all the metals, precious metals in Zimbabwe? Belarus, Russia. When you take things to Belarus, you are taking them to Russia. Why? The same Assad arrangement where Assad was gaining in Syria by protecting and supporting the Syrian regime of Assad. But today it fell. Mnangagwa, watch out. That's my point.
Wow. Mr. Nyoni is here of Yours Witnesses. Mr. Nyoni is a commentator on this news network for many years on religious matters. And the first time, one of the most prominent times that he was here was just before the 2017 coup. And around that time, Mr. Nyoni was also part of our contributors when a daddy character called Walter Masocha was on trial in 2015, 2014 and 2015, who eventually got prosecuted of rape back in those days. And I'm sure people will remember back in those days. If people Google Jean Gasho and Walter Masocha and also Hopo Chingono, and you can read stories of what happened back then. But then
Can
Mr.
we talk,
Nyoni is also...
Simba,
Yes, sir.
before you forget,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
can we talk about the issue of Ivan Mawarire and his flag? What did I tell you before the flag was being tossed by Mnangagwa? What did I tell you?
No, I do remember that one was really controversial. I don't know how you picked that one up. I
What
remember
did I
it
say
was
to
a
you?
lot of
Can you
people.
tell
No,
your
a lot of
viewers what
people.
I said?
You made a lot of people uncomfortable that time because what you were bringing seemed to be criticism against a movement and a
Yes.
man who was regarded as a genuine whistleblower, a genuine activist, not working for ZANU-PF for anyone in ZANU-PF, certainly not
Mm,
working for was someone like Emerson Mnangagwa, but you seemed
mm.
to have it back then.
I
You
told
seemed to
you,
have this eye and this ear for that detail. You seem to be faster than local journalists.
what did I tell you about Ivan Mawarire? Oh, okay, let me not even say about Ivan Mawarire. Let me say what did I tell you about the flag? Before Mnangagwa took the flag, what did I tell you?
Yes. Now the video is there. The live video is there.
Yes, the video is there.
When you
I phoned
phoned
and
me,
told you.
yes, yes,
I remember I had a friend from Zimbabwe. She's from Plumtree, a sister from Zimbabwe. She said,
yes.
I'm no longer going to talk to you anymore. And she blocked me. She only unblocked me 3-4 years ago now. And then I said, now it makes sense what you're talking about. But why? I said the
You
flag,
criticized Vele.
eh,
Why did you criticize the Pastor Ivan?
Ivan Mawarire, and tell us that flag belongs to Mnangagwa. How come?
Uh,
And I was so precise, and I told you that, Simba, this flag guy, Mnangagwa, there was not even one day where people saw Mnangagwa with that flag. But look at it today. Every day, everywhere. There is no place where you will go and see Mnangagwa without that flag of his. Where is Ivan Mawarire in this flag today?
hmm.
So I even told you that Simba flag ndeyamuna Emerson Mnangagwa kana vanhu vachifunga kuti ndinonyepa indaunotora vhidhiyo yachona uise paline vachazoona kuti ndakataura iflag yaMnangagwa ibvani mawarire ipapeti yaMnangagwa ari kubhadharwa naMnangagwa and people went haystack. But today, who do we see with the flag? As simple as that. Let the viewers answer for themselves. If today, Simba, if I can tell you, if that is a big if, I did it. If
Yes, sir.
we have a situation where the army commanders wake up and say, guys, we want to build our country. This Mnangagwa nonsense must come to an end. This period of December, like what the people of Syria have done. I don't know whether the people of Syria, that guy has made a very wise move, the so-called rebel leader, did it? What is the wise move he made? He sided with the West, seeing that Russia's days are over. Itsoro dzatamba kunyatsoona kuti ndikasaidha sezviri kuda kuitwa naMnangagwa kuti asaidhe naPutin kuti Putin ndindakamuisa maelection. Vakangwara kavarume ava vakuona kuti mazuva aPutin ave mashoma. We might say Putin is strong, he is not going to lose, hey, Putin that, Putin this. But the truth of the matter is that by now, if Putin was as strong as he professes, he should have overthrown Ukraine by now. But we are not seeing that.
But then, Mr. Yon, are you forgetting it's not just Putin in Zimbabwe? There's also
Yes.
Jinping. Where do you put Jinping? And where do you put Jinping there? Because Jinping is also.
Do you see something about China, Simba? Let me, if you read the history of China, China will never involve itself militarily in other people's affairs. Even if they say we will support you, you will never see them sending their soldiers to your nation. Do you get my point?
China will never?
Yeah, I mean, what we are talking of reality, what they have done so far. You see, assuming the Chinese saw Putin winning, what do you think? There's an island which they want to take. Taiwan, the island, they are all Chinese.
Somewhere there.
Yes, there's a small island which they claim is theirs. And in a case they see Russia prospering and taking over Ukraine, they will go for that small land. But now they are seeing that things are not working according to plan, in as far as Putin's moves are concerned. So what is the issue? They are on the fence. If the West wins, they will support the West because they want a side which will guarantee their safety. That's why I am 100% convinced that
China will not get involved in Zimbabwe issues. Are you sure of that?
Militarily, they will not. They will never, especially if they get a threat from the West. They can do what they are doing right now by just taking over mines and all other things, the economies and borrowing and lending money, lending money to these nations. But kuzoti vazopinda vaite hondo havazviiti vakangwara. This is where Assad lost. Why? The 15 billion American dollar weapons he was buying from Russia came to nothing. And Russia now says, okay, what have you to offer? Our sister Chin, we are turning our backs on you. And the rebels took over. Putin doesn't get into an equation because he wants to help. Anenge achida zvaanoda. KuZimbabwe anoda minerals. But now, if the army generals were going to be smart and move right now, they can take Mnangagwa out very easy, personal resistance. Why do you think Mnangagwa went to Russia and said, oh, Zambia has got American bases? He was trying to trigger a situation where Putin supports him first. But America's enemy is my enemy. But Putin is outstretched now. The resources are no longer there. This is where Assad finds himself today. Do you know where Assad is today, Simba?
I'm not aware, sir.
He is in Russia. Do you ever
You're very sure that Assad is in Russia?
100% confirm that he is in Russia? Where do you think he will go?
Assad is in Russia, you say?
Yeah, he's in Russia, Moscow. Now, this is where you see two superpowers fighting for the world. America fighting on this side, Russia fighting on this side. I don't know Bible Simba. Not the violent shall take it by force. The world is not ruled by waving a Bible. It's ruled by the gun. When you want to rule Zimbabwe, you must have a gun and force people to do what you want using the force of a barrel of a gun. This is exactly what ZANU-PF has been doing. But its days are being numbered because where they are getting their weapons in Russia, the source is going to dry very soon. And they will find themselves in a situation of Assad.
Right. Okay. So, Mr. Nyoni, quickly.
Yeah.
We're about to end. I need you to give us a conclusion here on this matter so that we stay on topic and our readers and viewers and listeners will go home with something that they've learned from your opinions and your analysis of events.
Yeah.
Would you give us just a 3-minute? I won't interrupt you, and you're going to close the program. I'm not going to say anything. You're
Okay.
also the one who was going to say, we're just going to wave goodbye to our viewers, readers, and listeners as we should.
I thank you for that time. Do you remember? I shot a video where I spoke about the UN. Maybe you didn't listen to it. Maybe I'll not with you. Where I said the UN is ZANU-PF, is a cell belonging to ZANU-PF, or ZANU-PF is a cell of the UN.
Yes, I know you are a deep critic of the UN. I don't know why.
Yes.
But,
why I say this? I will qualify my statement. When you look at the UN, its sole purpose was to solve problems arising in countries. A good example being what is happening right now in Mozambique under Frelimo and the opposition. If UN was fit for purpose, they could have solved the issue of Frelimo and the rigged elections in Mozambique by now, if they were fit for purpose. What is my point? My point being that when you look at the UN, you look at Russia, you look at America, you look at Africa, you look at the Mediterranean, you look at Syria, you look at Israel, you look at Hamas. There is only one thing which UN acts. Why am I talking about the UN? I am talking about the Zimbabwean crisis. If the UN was fit for purpose, they should have solved the Zimbabwean issue 1994, 1990, when the elections were being rigged by Robert Mugabe. But because their agenda is not what they profess to be, they have an agenda, and their agenda is to prop up an organization, which when that organization suffers, they are useless. Where do we have the UN acting? Not in Zimbabwe, not in Mozambique, not in Namibia, but only in the Middle East, where Israel is involved. Why? Their agenda is not to help the world. Their agenda is to prop up a certain religion. And they have done it cunningly, subliminally. This is the reason why you see Simba. When you go to Africa today, the only places which the UN intervenes is a place where they will leave a government, and that government is an Islamic government, if you care to know. When you hear that they've intervened in Ivory Coast, the next thing you hear, an Islamic leader is risen up. You go to Senegal, you go to Tanzania, you go to Kenya, You go to any part of Africa where you hear that the UN intervened, the next thing you hear is that a government which remained in power was Islamic, because their agenda is only to fulfill the interests of Islam. Right now, Zimbabweans are the first people who should see that the UN is not fit for purpose. The Mozambicans should be the first to see that the UN is not fit for purpose. You go to northern Nigeria, they should tell you that the UN is not fit for purpose. Why? All they are looking at is Israel, 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 Israel. Why? They are not after solving the problems of the world. They are after propping up a religion. Thank you, Simba, and your listeners.
Mr. Nyoni, thank you very much. We're going to be shutting our viewers witnesses.